Dad, you gotta just put them up on the front chair.
Yeah. We need to grab the, where's all the hatchets? Here's one.
Oh, yeah. Where'd mine go? I had it in my pack. You take it out for demonstration? Oh, it's laying over there.
Where? There.
Yeah, that was mine.
Okay. We'll get this stuff off of here just so it's not distracting as to what we're doing. So let's kneel and have a prayer and ask the Lord to be with us. And our dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you so much for leading and guiding today. We want to thank you for being our helper. Through this day, I pray for safety as we work with sharp things and the aptitude to be able to learn. And for your leading, we praise you. Bless and guide now and keep us in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we want to talk about tool sharpening. If we're going to have knives, tools of such, axes, we need to learn how to sharpen them, because maybe I can remember the verse. There's a Bible verse. It's Ecclesiastes 10:10.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so Ecclesiastes 10:10 says, if iron be blunt, okay, if iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, we'll explain that in a moment if you don't know what that is, then must he put more strength. But wisdom is profitable to direct.
Where's it from?
Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 10. If iron be blunt, okay, so let's do this. Okay, if I have a very dull axe, okay, and I'm going to go chop some wood, some branches, it's going to take a lot more effort from me to cut through that than if it were sharp. If the chainsaw is dull, it's going to take a lot more work to sharpen, or to, not to sharpen, it's going to take a lot more work with the chainsaw to cut it, or the handsaw to cut if it's dull. And the Bible tells us this. If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge. There's a reason they call it whetting the edge. My grandfather actually would tell me, son, he'd always call me son. Son, you need to whet the edge of that knife. It's awful dull. Okay? The reason they do that is because it is called a whet stone.
Where's our bucket of water?
Our can. Yeah, we need to... I guess I can just... We need our can, and it's still full of
Cotton balls.
cotton ball making from yesterday for fire starting. You might want to take a paper towel. Bring me one as well. You can see I just made a mess out of myself here. Wipe that out and bring us some water, Matt. So he would tell me to wet the edge of the knife and to sharpen it. And he taught me how to sharpen a knife. And the first time I tried, he handed me a stone, something like this, partially worn out. And he hands me the stone, take the knife, and I watch Grandpa, and Grandpa's taking it. Of course, he gets it wet, and I'll explain about that in a moment. But he takes it and he starts doing like this on it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And I'm like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, 7 years old, something like that. So I'm doing like this, and he shows me now. He says, I want you to feel it and see if it's sharp. Well, you don't run your finger this way down the blade. You're going to slice yourself open if you do that. You can feel it this way. And you can take a very, very sharp knife and feel it like this and know that it is sharp or dull or where it's sharp. This one actually, in all honesty, with what I just did there, I dulled it pretty good. It's sharper out here, but back here it's pretty dull at the moment. Thank you. That's get some of the Vaseline off my hands. So what I want to share with you is how we sharpen a knife, how we sharpen an axe. By the way, when speaking of my grandfather, in his estimation, if you couldn't, is it sharp enough to do that, Matt?
I think so.
Okay.
Let me work on it a little bit first.
Okay, you work on that for a little bit. So in his estimation, if you couldn't roll up your sleeve, take your knife and go like this and have it shave it off, that was a dull knife. That was what he called a sharp knife, was razor sharp. Some knives, this one in particular, I don't think you could ever get this knife that sharp. The steel's too cheap. The knife Matt's working on is very well capable. So before we talk about sharpening techniques, I want to talk more about some of the different things that are out here. So we have whetstones, and there's a reason they call them wet. Different stones. This one has a coarse on one side and a finer on the other side. You can kind of see the difference between the stones. So coarse is general shaping, getting the right angle. Fine is to smooth it up so that you can make it sharper. This one's built kind of the same way, fine and coarse with it. Turn it this way because that's the way I had the other one. So fine is over here, coarse is over here on the stone. Here's one that's just one. No, this one's double as well. This is a coarser, kind of medium, and this is finer on this side of this round stone. Another shaped one. This again is coarse and fine. They do that a lot with them. This one happens to be just a coarse stone. Then there's diamond stones, like what Matt's got there, or like this one here. And again, we've got someplace here, it says on it.
That one doesn't say, it just says fine and coarse.
Oh, it's up here. Coarse and fine on the diamond stones.
This one has fine, 600 grit, super fine, 1200 grit.
So those that are familiar with sandpaper, we're used to like 120 grit sandpaper. Well, that would be considered very coarse compared to this diamond stone. Now, all stones wear out as you use them. You can see the shape of this one. I had another one down, and I didn't get it up here. It's down in the trailer. It's even worn even more so. It's the one my grandfather gave me from many years ago. And they wear out. Diamond stones are the same way. All they are is a piece of steel. When they spray fragments of diamonds on here with some sort of adhesive to keep the diamonds attached. And they can, of course, depending on how coarse they are. But they wear off, and pretty soon all you have is some steel that's left that's on here. So and it's just right on the surface. A diamond stone, you do not have to get wet. You can use it dry.
Like him.
A whetstone, if you use it, if you were to take a knife and start working your knife to it and it's not wet, you will plug up the grit, and then it becomes a real problem and it doesn't work very well. And you can also make it a whetstone, you can make it an oil stone. All you do to do that is, instead of using water with it, you use a bit of oil on it. You use oil as your lubricant or your cleaning solvent on your motor oil, transmission oil. Yeah. I mean, you could use cooking oil. I wouldn't use motor oil for the knife in the kitchen, that's for sure. But you could use, the other thing I like to do as well with the whetstone, see, And where I prefer to do this is at the kitchen sink,
Just do it under running water.
and just
Or in
turn
the
the
creek.
water on just a little tiny bit, let it kind of drizzle onto my stone. And then as I'm working it, the other thing I like to do with it as I'm working my knife is put a little bit of like dish soap on it, and I'll use just
If
a
you
tiny
have
bit
it.
of soap if I've got it available to do. It helps to kind of keep that surface out. Or keep the grit out because as you're grinding it off so that it will go. So now, as to techniques, there's the movement like what Matt is doing, which is just he's on the very fine, he's working it, just kind of working it, getting a really fine
On a knife like this, I would do this because I don't really care much about the edge. If the angle is different, which we'll talk about that some.
Yep.
This knife, I'm doing it this way because I'm way more precise.
Notice though, as he's doing that, see how his hand's coming up and down?
To match that blade on that stone. I'm not doing this. I'm doing...
Keeping his angle, so the angle on the blade to the knife is the same all the way. And the other thing then that you've got to choose to do is with a knife or an axe, whatever you're sharpening, so I'm going to go this way with it. If we sharpen the pitch of it, let's say like this, okay? This would be considered fairly blunt, okay? Now I'm exaggerating with my hands, but if I'm doing this with the axe and my angle on my axe is more blunt instead of more fine like this, okay? This way will never be as sharp as this way. But when you're this way and you hit something, it's more liable to chip, dent, break, dull, even the cutting board. So you take a very, very sharp knife
Like
that's
this one.
like this one that Matt's got here, and you sharpen it. It is sharpened at a very, very
And it's
steep
sharpened
angle
at
like this.
one angle. A lot of knives have a dual angle like this. I'll use the stone as an example. It has, okay, the steel is like this. Then it has this angle, and then the actual blade angle is like this. This knife, the steel, and the actual blade angle.
And the difference there and the purpose behind that is for sharpness. If you sharpened this hatchet like he has sharpened that knife, it would be razor sharp. It would cut super, super well. The problem is, the first time you hit a knot on a piece of wood with it, it's going to dull it. So what we want to do with a tool like this, it can be still sharp, but we want a little steeper angle to it. It won't be as sharp, but it's going to stay sharp longer. When you're dealing with a knife that you want really, really razor sharp, you're going to make it a finer angle. But if he were to use this knife on the cutting board, which he actually often does, if he were to use it there,
A wood cutting board will dull this knife.
not one cut,
No.
but over, like using it to make a meal, like if you were back here, as we can hear somebody back there in the kitchen cutting things up. If you're using a sharp, sharp knife like this and on that cutting board, by the end of the meal, you're probably going to grab a stone and sharpen it up a little bit again. Now, what happens when you sharpen a knife a lot, this knife used to be a lot bigger. This distance here is much, much smaller than it used to be. It's gone away. Here's another example. And this pocket knife, this thing has been sharpened and sharpened. It's gotten very, very thin, very pointed out here at the end because of much sharpening, because it's an old pocket knife. So it grinds it off, it grinds it away as you sharpen it. The steel is leaving as well. So technique, depending on what you want for your sharpen. This particular knife, what I chose to do with it, so I have the knife blade up here. They have ground an angle on the knife.
It's a 2-angle knife.
And then I have another angle that's a little steeper. If I wanted this knife to be way sharp,
And use that
So
as an
we've-
example.
so we've got, there's straight, the knife, there's tipped with that. My angle is about like that. Fairly steep angle, very short. If I wanted this knife to be way sharper, I'm holding it to the angle of the blade, it would be like this. You'd go this way, it would be like this instead of like that. I use this knife, its purpose is like a utility knife. It's the one that's been on my side. I use it for cutting all kinds of things. And so I don't make it as sharp because I don't want it to get as dull as quick. And so now, because of that, I know what I need for angle. I think I'll grab this one here as the diamond. And I'm going to the coarse side because it's fairly dull. I'm going to set my angle that I want, and I'm going to draw the knife across it. And I'm moving very, very slowly so that we can hopefully see as I go. And I'm going to kind of exaggerate here. As I come across this, I'm pulling this, but see if I go straight on out, this part of my knife doesn't touch the stone. As I come up, it's up here. So I literally have to curve and bring my arm up.
You're not keeping it the same angle though.
I'm changing angle. I'm trying to exaggerate, so I'm not keeping it the same angle. You want to keep that same angle all the way across as you go. So the idea is how much you tip. Okay, when I'm sitting on this angle, my knife is 1/8 of an inch off of the stone.
I'm gonna have them look at the difference.
I'm running a steeper angle like this. What's that? It's probably
Look at
closer
the
to 1/4 of an
bluntness
inch
difference.
tip. So I want to keep that same tip as I go with my angle. Matt's going to bring around and show the, yeah, I want your fingers on that one he's got there. It is razor sharp.
So this one here has a very, very short angle. This one has a very long angle. You don't like this one?
I don't like real short.
Yes.
It will hold its edge longer, but it's not going to be as sharp in the long term.
So-
Will not hold this edge longer.
No, this one.
This one.
This
So
one is
the-
much sharper, but it won't last as long. It'll easily chip. This one's sharpened, not as steep. Yeah.
Yeah, this one feels thick.
It is.
But this one
Okay,
you
so-
can use-
Yes, much sharper.
The trick for the sharpening, number one, is practice. Practice, practice, practice. I almost guarantee it, the first time you try, you're going to make things worse, not better. That's typically what everybody does
You can actually
But
like see
you
the
keep
bluntness of
working at it
versus that.
until you
See the angle?
get so that it starts becoming better. Diamond stone's great and easy to practice on because as you practice with a diamond stone, you don't have to worry about keeping it wet or lubed with something and whatnot to help keep it clean. You can just
Yeah. this
take to it.
has
When I'm
the
sharpening with a diamond stone, if I do the circular motion,
For
I'm
what?
out on the tip, I work my way back and I'm just circular. I don't even have to look at what I'm
Will
doing
make its edge
anymore.
Longer. This one will hold its edge longer, but it won't
Um,
last as long. This
Some
one
people with
is more
circular
sharper.
tend to do
I just said that
exaggerated.
backwards.
They
This one
tend to
holds
do
its
this
edge
more
longer, and it's not as sharp.
on the knife. So in other words, they're not keeping the same angle, or they do this with it, and so they're not keeping the same angle. The trick to getting a sharp knife is you want the same angle. You can't be going like this as you're moving, exaggerating it. You can't be doing this as you move as you sharpen. You want that angle to stay the same. You pick how you want it and you work it. Now, one thing too, cheap knife. This is a $20 flea market knife. Okay, Matt's knife, that's the sharp one there. That is a handmade, it was a gift to him. He'd have probably never spent that much on a knife. That's a $700 knife. And Yeah, look at the, can you see the hair on the knife?
No.
See the hair on the knife blade?
Hair is there, folks.
Okay, it's not on there anymore, it's down here. Okay, so,
Leave your hair on.
so, yeah, there you go. Hey, it would work for that.
It would.
In the
but-
olden days, they used to get a shave just like
Straight edge, you bet.
Amazing.
So, but here's the thing. This knife, no matter how I sharpen it, work it, no matter how much I work for it, it will never be as sharp as that knife. The reason why is this is cheap steel, cheap junk steel, okay? This knife has really good steel. This old pocket knife, I use it basically, there's another good example. You can see how much that blade's worn down. But this one here has really good steel. So the older knives have good steel, or if you get a handmade knife.
Not just a cheap handmade
knife.
that's.
Come out of India or China
There
or
are
something.
some expensive knives that are not worth the expense, but
Yes.
there are others that are.
Oh, I bought a good example.
How
I'm
would
gonna.
you know what is good and what's not good?
How
would you know? I mean, I don't know.
Okay, I'll explain that in a second.
I never bought a knife in my life, to be honest with you.
So I'll explain how you can tell the difference and what you can look for. So years ago, I had a guy tell me, oh, you want this certain model of, the brand was a SOG, S-O-G, knife, a SOG knife. You want the brand of a SOG. And you want this model because in one of their advertising points is they set the knife in a vise. They took a 45 caliber pistol from point blank range, blocked it, set it, in a lab where they could do it, and they shot it with slow motion, and they shot the bullet right center on the knife. And it shows the bullet splitting and flying on both sides of the knife. This was their advertisement for it. And then they show you the knife in the end, and there's no dent in the knife. It looks really, really good. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. That
What
was really,
was that?
really good knife. So I bought one. And this was back in the 90s. And I saved a long time. And I sold some things, and I put together the $115 it took me to buy that knife. And I bought that knife, and I was never so disappointed in my life. It was, in fact, I don't even own it anymore. I sold it for $15 in a yard sale. The steel was so hard that if you were to take and go like this to it, there would be a chip in the knife blade. And the reason it worked with the bullets is bullets are lead. Lead is one of the softest metals, so of course it went and split it. Actually, I think, I've never tried it. Don't know that I want to. It wouldn't be worth it, but you could probably take this $20 cheap knife and do the same thing, and it would probably do it just fine. It would split it and not hurt it, would be my thoughts now. I didn't realize that then. But so how do you tell, to answer your question, how do you tell the difference in good steel versus junk steel? Number one, where is it made? And is it, there are knives, I'm going to talk about this one briefly here. There are knives that are called Damascus steel. Damascus steel is steel that is, Damascus steel is lots of little pieces of scrap steel that are all of the same type, and then they heat them and they hammer them and they work them until it becomes one piece of steel.
And this is a good steel.
And it is a good steel. The problem is there's more fake Damascus knives out there than there are real.
How do you know they're real?
This one is a fake one right here. Okay? You see this pattern that's in that knife?
Check this one out. Look at the cut. Look at where it's sharpened.
That's crap. They do solid layers.
It's fake, isn't it, Matt?
What they do is they
So there's they do one of two things when they make a fake Damascus knife. This is a fake. And how I can tell is because if you look, you can see the pattern up top
Grind
here,
the back of it or look fresh sharpened
where it's
and look at
freshly
it.
sharpened.
There's no pattern. The pattern's only on the surface. True Damascus, that pattern is the grain.
It's the grain, and it goes all the
metal.
way through the knife. That's how you tell. So you could look at like this knife. You could look at the back of it. I have filed it for two reasons. One, so I could use it as a striker. Two, so that I could see if it really was legit.
This one, I don't.
It's
honestly
not.
know unless you try it. It does have two angles,
So
but it could be very easily sharpened into one angle.
a Damascus knife like this one, okay, I paid $20 for this knife. That immediately told me it's a phony because it was cheap. But there are places out there selling knives that are, quote, Damascus steel, that they're selling them for a lot of money. They're making them by doing one of two methods. They're laser etching them so that it literally is just kind of like burned on the surface, or they chemical etch them, which is a process where they're dipping them in chemicals and they make it look like it is.
It's kind of like sometimes what they do with tire rims. They have a chemical and they spray another chemical on the surface and then they dip them a certain way and it gives it that pattern.
That pattern look. True Damascus steel, you're going to find when you see a pattern, you will see where it's sharpened, or on the back of the knife, you will see this where it's
And like
not,
that one, all the way up there.
Yeah,
They
the
didn't
other way
even
you can
bother.
look. Okay, and one thing we talked about the other day, and I should mention this again because there's a bunch of different folks here. When you're getting a knife, one thing you want is what's called a full tang knife. That means that the steel comes all the way full back through the knife. Now, sometimes, example, Matt's knife there, this knife here, both of these knives are full tang knives, but you can't see it. The only way we would know is if we cut off the handle, which would ruin the knife. So we trusted the manufacturer and the representative.
This one I can feel.
You can kind of feel by weight. The reason you want a full tang knife, I have one here that is not. It's this one right here. This knife, and I've had it apart, I know what it looks like in there, has a little rod that goes through here that's less than 1/4 of an inch. Attaches right in here at the back of this knife, goes through, comes right here. There's like a little nut that tightens all this stuff down here on the handle. So the problem here, this is a weak point right here. If I'm using this knife hard, it's likely to break right here. The reason this one has it, I've never used it hard. I've used it a lot, but I've never used it in a hard survival situation where it's getting hard use.
Another knife. Full tang, right? Looks great. Look at the shape of it. We have our nice big knife blade, and it gets super narrow right there. So even though it is full tang, we now have a weak point right here.
Because of how narrow it got.
If you're using this for carving or doing your food cooking or whatever, it's going to work great. But if you're doing any harder stuff with it, you're going to snap your blade off.
When you buy a knife in a store, is it as sharp as basically it can get? I mean, is it ready to go, or do you have to sharpen it right away?
Some
sharpen
people
with
think that
machines.
it's really, that they're really, really sharp.
Which one? This is a big.
Kitchen knives,
That's a good one.
all the ones.
Most the way,
Always have to sharpen.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as I'm concerned, being that I know how to sharpen knives,
That's one of the first things I do.
any knife that comes from the store, the first thing you have to do is reshape the edge to a good edge,
To what you're going to be using
to
it
what
for.
you want it for, and then sharpen it up, because it's likely going to be pretty dull. And a good sharp knife, where's your good knife, Matt? I'm going to,
Hold that tight. Or I don't
you
know.
just hold it out there like that. Okay, so now we know this one's not sharp to give you the difference. And I'm honestly trying. Go ahead and pull there.
Go on
I'm
this
more
side.
tearing it.
You failed.
Okay, this is, yeah. This knife got some abuse yesterday, and I haven't sharpened it up yet, and I intentionally left it that way. So, by the way, paper is really hard on a knife. It actually dulls it quite quickly. And one good proof of that is we have a guillotine paper cutter in our house for printing and trimming all of the books. And I actually don't, even though I sharpen knives, I don't sharpen that blade. I send it off to...
It is a razor blade. The sharpening edge is about that wide. The steel is about 1/4 inch thick, and it's about that long. On our other one, the blade's about that long. And when you take that out, you move it with care.
Yes. You can't tell now, but
We've removed
3 weeks
fingernails.
ago, the blade was, I didn't quite get it adjusted right, and I reached in to grab a book, and I pulled my finger out, and I just ticked it on my thumbnail. And just a light tick, it cut clear through the thumbnail and into the flesh below the thumbnail and left a hole right there in the middle of my thumbnail. Just that quick.
I've removed 2 thumbnails and 1 middle fingernail
Off
from
of that paper cutter. And the funniest one is, we got to share about this. This is just too funny not to. Matthias was instructing an older man.
You got to realize I'm 11 at this point.
At that point, instructing him how to be careful with this paper cutter. So that
76-year-old.
he's 76. And he didn't take too kindly to a young kid telling him what to do. Well, this young kid had hours of experience.
He was being careless because I was running the guillotine paper cutter from the time I was... When did you get that thing?
I don't know. We had it before you were, or we got it right after you were born, I think.
Yeah, I was using it when I was...
He
like
would
4 and
pull on the
5.
handle, and then he'd go like this and jump and hang it on the handle, pull the handle down because he didn't have enough weight to just pull it down.
I'd hang upside down on it and whatnot. Anyway, so I'm telling him, be careful. He was being careless. And I said, I pointed very carefully, and I said, that right there is the blade. Keep your fingers away from it. And he's like, oh, what, that? Oh. And he goes like this. And I said, yes, that. And my mom says, you're bleeding on the floor. And he says, no, I'm not.
It's like, look down, and you look down, and here's this puddle of blood on the floor.
Just that. It took it from right here, took his fingernail off. Just
cleaned it.
Clean.
Just a quick, took it clean off because he was not careful. So things can be razor sharp. Now, obviously, the steel makes a big difference. So good
it was
brand.
so sharp, he did not feel it.
Yeah, it wasn't hurting at all. You don't.
It takes a second for it to actually start hurting. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did. We didn't make him suffer. We put some, well, maybe we did, but putting cayenne on it, huh? And they bandaged up. I was actually gone working when that happened. And
is this good knife as this one?
Both.
I think they're both good knives.
The buck knife, I actually just bought that knife for $111 on eBay, and it was the cheapest one I found.
And it was used.
The new ones are like $350.
So what you're looking for is not always just expensive. Expensive doesn't always mean it's good. We could talk about the different types of steel that it's made from. I think the best way to do it, though, is just look at, when you're searching, look at reviews of what other people are saying about it, that have purchased the knives as far as for looking for steel. Those two, the Kershaw, this little pocket knife is a Kershaw, and I find it to be pretty good steel. It's not as good a steel as Matt's got over here with this, but there's a problem here, and I'll share this before we go back to sharpening. So this little pocket knife and the steel with it versus Matt's good knife here. This knife will not rust. This knife will rust badly. Typically, a knife that's really good steel will rust. You can get a stainless steel knife that is pretty good steels.
Stainless steel?
Yes,
Both of those are.
I think actually both of those are.
So this middle looks dark.
Yeah, they painted it.
It's got a coating on it. That coating will see how it's not dark where the sharpened edge is.
Probably
So
getting the website to reveal their outlook.
Yeah.
yeah,
If they don't tell you, then you have no idea.
then you have no idea.
Yeah, getting for the people online.
I mean, we could, if you really wanted to spend the money, we could direct you to how to get in touch to the guy that made this. He still makes knives. He doesn't. I knew him before when he started making knives.
This knife was made in 2020.
I knew him when he started making knives, and some of his first knives weren't so good, but he has really perfected the art of doing it and does a fantastic job. They're durable.
His cases are not real great, but personally, I don't like that, but I've not taken the time to make my own.
It's kind of basic, but the knife itself, he's really gotten that down with the steel.
No.
No.
Fisher.
His last name's Fisher.
Is Dade Show a good night?
Is what?
Dade Show?
D-
Never heard of
D-
it.
Never heard of it.
That's not good.
So we'll look at that, and then we're going to go back to on
Get
sharpening.
them to admit it, it's 4140 stainless, then it's a good deal.
Then it's yeah, and usually they won't.
And that's the sticker.
First indicator on this one that tells me that it's so there's some good things here, there's some bad things. Number one that's bad, it says China. Does that tell you anything? Okay. The good thing, it's not quite full tang. I mean, it does have steel all the way around, but to lighten it, they've cut out parts, which is a help. That makes it lighter. That's nice. This is actually, it's kind of funny what that's for. I think they're using it here to make the knife light, but it's actually called a blood groove. It's so that if you're using it as a killing thing, and as you're cutting in, the blood has a way for escape. They'll do them as a dip, a dimple in the knife. They'll also do them as a groove. But I think with this one, it's more of just getting rid of extra steel to make it lighter. Factory edge, fairly sharp. It's not doing too bad. Obviously better than mine we know is dull. I would have to say that I wouldn't call it a good quality knife, but it would probably do the job. I mean, we're not after knives for killing purposes or for anything. It's not a weapon or anything like that. It's to use as a tool. It's for shelter building. It's a survival tool. It's for cutting branches. It's for cutting herbs, using them. You know, I'll use it in the ground. I carry two knives. It's a cheaper knife as long as, so the key thing you're after is you want the full tang so that it's a sturdy knife. Okay, that's one of the key factors. Probably for you, even though that one's got some, void spots in there to lighten it up, that might be a way that you're able to carry that knife along with some other things to have lost a little weight so that your pack doesn't end up more weight than you can carry. You'd be better off with some void spots in the knife, losing some weight so you can have a few other little things and be able to take it with you than a really heavy knife that's along with others that you can't carry that you're.
Can we do hands-on experience here
Yes.
with these?
I was going to go to the actual sharpening and then we can say, let's get everybody on it. Where are we at for time? 47. Okay, and we are 12:30. So we've got about, a little more. Okay, that works good. So with the sharpening. I'll use the diamond.
Yeah.
The angle, set your angle, go slow, and just start working your knife. If you want to do a circular,
The circular, I've seen people tend to do
they wobble the knife.
exaggerated. They do this while they're doing their circle.
And what happens is you wobble and you come up steeper, and if I come up like this and I go like that, I just dulled the knife. Okay? So it's getting it at that angle, being consistent and pulling it there. And the way to do it is practice, practice, practice. So with that said, let's, we should probably get the paper towels up here, some dish soap. We've got numerous knives. You're welcome to, well, Matt's not going to want you practicing on his good one.
The other ones are fine.
But on his fancy one. But this is a great practice one.
I'll go get some paper towel.
Either of these, this one, I really don't want to have to resharpen those. If you've got your own, you can practice on it too. But I've got, so there's what? There's 3, there's 4 up here
Paper towel.
that we can use for practice and not worry about. If you make it worse, I'm not going to growl at you, okay? It's no big deal there. One other thing,
I'm taking
while
your
Matt's
soap.
getting some stuff up here, we carry a file. This is the file that I carry in my pack. Matt's chosen to, he's cut some weight. He carries
Oh,
a
that's
smaller
because
one.
the other one that came with the set, so that's what I used.
So that's what he's using. I use a file here. My grandfather sharpened his axe with a whetstone. Like this is what he sharpened it with. I know that very, very well. I was standing on a tree cutting branches off for him, and I'm standing there and I'm going like this, and I came down and I went right along the side of my foot, and I just took the side of my boot clear off. I took my sock off, and there was my toes hanging out, the whole side of my foot hanging right out the side of the boot. I never touched my foot. It was close. I mean, if there had been hair there, I'd have probably shaved it. It was that close. But I never got my foot, but that's how sharp his tools were. And that's what he did, and they were always that way. But I'll tell you what, when you go to cut a branch off with an axe like that, it's just boink. Hi. Boink.
You're doing that again like you did last time.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, it takes, like we read in the scriptures, a dull tool takes more effort. A sharp tool takes less effort. And so if you like to work hard, run dull tools. And that goes for shovels, picks. It's amazing. If you have a sharp shovel, there we go. Let's pull our shovels out here. We can let them look. So come on up here. Matthias sharpened his shovel. I have not, of recent anyway. Go out straight. So if we were into the dirt with these 2 little army shovels, you would be amazed. Leave them out here so they can look at them. You would be amazed at how much easier his tool would work into the ground than mine. He got a little bit too steep of an angle. We were talking about that here just the other day when he did it. He got a little, say too steep. In other words, he drew it out too fine. And so going in the dirt, it's going to dull real quickly. So once it dulls up, he'll change his angle and improve that. So come on up here. Did we get some? We did. We got the soap up here. And for anybody that wants to try, and we're just going to practice with sharpening. You can try diamond, you can try wet. So what we want to do, if you're going to go with a whetstone, we just want to get it wet.
So which one
Yeah.
is that again?
It's a whetstone. It's just a different shape.
I've worked with shovels before on my father.
These are the same trouble that you have
Yeah.
Yeah, if you use the little one, do you use it in
You-
your
You can do-
motion hand?
You can do either.
One
pattern.
thing you want to do
I don't
when you
think so.
hold the stone, keep your fingers below
Mm-hmm.
the surface level so that if I slip off, there's less chance I'm going to cut myself. Usually it's a circular motion on a round stone. Wait, look at that stone. It's so dry, it's just soaking up all the, look at the water just go into it.
It's just like a sponge.
It is. Yeah, look at, I see the bubbles coming off of it down there. It's just soaking it up. I haven't done that for a while.
He's thirsty.
You can imagine the end
I mean, you can.
top
Okay.
bend over.
So you can do it this way, and you sharpen
Towards you as opposed to
both sides.
You can do either.
of the edge.
like away.
Well, like
Yes, that is a
here,
wet
we're going
stone.
away like this.
Is this dry?
I'm wearing a
That's, no, it's a wetstone as well. The only ones that are dry is that we have out here,
Well, when you're working on one
is
side, it's pointing
that
towards you.
one
When
with
you
the
work
green
the
on
other
it,
side, it's pointing away from
and
you.
these two are
So
diamond
here I'm on the
stones.
right side of it,
What should I do if I
or if I do it this way.
So since you could kind of see
On this
what's
side,
there,
I'm working away.
go up, you're probably a little too steep, so you
So the
about,
angle of right here, I guess.
yes, just the angle of kind of copy what's there for angle.
I thought I would go this way.
Nope, you pull it to it. Okay, your fingers are above this. If you want to slice those, you're on the right track.
I remember years ago, like
So I go this way.
files.
Yes, pull it to, okay, too steep, come down flatter. There you go, like that.
But yeah, like
They were
going
trying
down
to-
make a-
Yeah, just give you safety. You can do it either way.
Ideal, it should be remaining wet. That one is
With
just
files.
soaking it up. It's amazing. I haven't,
it's still
With
it's still
files,
not really wet.
You don't go.
you try
Nope,
and
You don't
go
go back and forth. And if you drag it back, so when you,
with files.
I mean,
Oh,
if you're
we
doing
do
it this
this,
way, see, I'm literally
and
just
then we
picking
flip
it up.
over.
If I'm
We do
going,
this.
if I'm going circular, I do
that's-
this,
That's if you're
and I am going
like
both
starting
directions.
out. You can. We don't recommend
That's why
it. but you
this-
can
No,
do
it's
that.
not the same. I did,
No.
before, but I didn't know.
Because you were saying don't go this way, but if you're going this way.
Yeah, if you're circling it, you are wearing it off, but it's how you're cutting the edge.
Coarse.
No, I can see that.
This is a lot coarser.
One way is just-
There is times we will use a file on our knife if we ended up getting like a huge bite out of it or
Well, since
something.
when sharpening that should be this
We'll-
complicated.
file it down.
It,
What you need, and then go to,
Finer.
say, 600 grit, and then we're gonna finish
Finer.
off the 1200 grit. With axes, normally I'll use the file and then do like 600 grit and leave it at that.
That's question like
Is that good?
portability, like to
Kind of circular, but going back and
circular, working it back and forth.
carry to keep your stuff sharpened with two
And
knives. What would be like?
then what you want to do, I try that stone and it's holding the water
Yeah,
better.
it's holding the water.
So then what you do, take your fingers and you don't want to run it down the knife, but you go across the knife, feel it, come from both sides, feel it this way, feel it this way, because believe it or not, you
How do
can
I know
feel a
if the stone
difference.
is Dry, I gotta wet it again. How would I know?
To keep it wet.
Every so many.
Get your fingers down. We don't want to have to bandage you up or sew you up.
Well, we need to practice.
Well, we're going to
first aid,
work
right?
on first aid, so go ahead, cut your thumb really good, and then we'll have an example for, we can suture you. So- check it, work on it, then check it again.
Try and get you to. Where's your roughest stone?
My roughest stone,
I have a really junk knife.
So what I'm trying to do.
Take a
I
lot
think actually he's using
Try to get all the way
that-
up here too.
that, well, this one's pretty rough
So
as
what
well.
you're doing.
Oh, I know what that is.
And I'm not getting up there
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, it's
So
a-
you kind
You know how to use them?
It's a really
There
junk
you
knife.
go. Yeah.
I mean, can I show you how you work a butterfly?
It's been a while since you've done
Been a while since I've done this. You ready?
It's to keep it at the same angle as I'm going up.
Come on. It's been many years since I've run a butterfly. This is, I actually went to a butterfly for the purpose of, I could have this in my pocket carried it in my back pocket, could pull it out, open it up. One hand, I cut a lot of cardboard boxes down. I could do it, and I could close it, but it also looked really cool. And I was a teenager when I had the butterfly knives to do that. But oh man, I'm really gotten rusty.
You don't cut yourself.
That's about it.
Well, I did do a check. It's pretty old. When I first started with this, because you're actually, if you do this slowly, you're flipping the blade. But if you don't flip it right, this is the side that hits your finger. But if you don't flip it right, you end up with the sharp side hitting it. So what I went and did is I took the knife and went and dulled it up really good, so that when I went to practicing on it, boy, it's been many years since I've done that. Yeah.
About the sharp. Do I do pretty good?
It's about the same. It's not better. It's not worse.
Oh.
By the way,
I
once
didn't know how
once
it
they came
started.
out with the spring assist, I was like, yeah, that accomplishes the same thing. And no, they're not a switchblade. Some states, butterflies are illegal.
Yeah. I didn't worry about that.
That's
I always carried one of these in my pocket when I
maybe
was over.
somebody wants to rub it on their
Oh.
face.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
Mark, Maylene has a bunch of knives here. You want to help her with each one and see
Okay.
what you can do
So if I
with
want
it
to sharpen this side,
to show her.
should I sharpen this side?
Okay.
You need to equally sharpen both sides.
So what do I do for them sides?
Flip it to that way.
Yeah, when you work with the knife, make sure you work one side,
This side.
Right.
turn it over, work the other side. You work both sides the same. You can do like what he's doing, one stroke on one side, one stroke on the other side,
You could guys have this space over there.
or you can
Yeah, right now.
do a bunch on one side and then a bunch on the other side. Marvin doesn't do that for you. I figured he'd be really good at it.
He used to be, but
It must be like my wife. Here I am teaching knives, and her kitchen knives are terrible.
anyway, I don't know. There's a sad story behind that knife. And I don't know if it's worth anything, but I decided to. It's
Yeah.
way too thick for me.
Yeah,
I used to actually
it's
see those on Amazon.
I like this.
yeah. That's a much better kitchen. Oh, and that's got good steel in it.
I know.
That's a really good steel knife.
And I had another one like it, but I started shipping, so I had to throw it
Too hard.
away.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, this one's too thick. I mean, it'll sharpen up. That one would
This one, I've already worked on it.
I mean, it's a beautiful knife, but that one.
pretty is not
It's supposed to be a
pretty
chef
as pretty does. We've
Right.
heard, right?
Yeah, right. It's a piece of junk.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty, but it's too thick.
Well, the thick sometimes is nice. That it's the style of how it's made and whatnot. To be honest, I think that's a finger breaker.
Uh-huh.
Keep your finger stuck in there when you're chopping.
Yeah.
Bust your finger off.
So you're a more heavy duty angle than I was doing.
Okay. I'm going just slightly up. So there's your flat where this is up against here. There's the angle of your knife, which is ever so slight. I tend to run on a knife like this, just about like that. And for kitchen, I would think that would be adequate. And I think that's about what I'm running.
What do you think of those ceramic
The angle on them is designed. It's not a flat angle like what we're doing. It's too steep, so it's sharpening on an angle like this. So it'll never get it super sharp, and it will. It will sharpen it. The angle, the cut, and the reason they do that is because it's going to be sharper than most knives currently are by doing that. And the ceramic will sharpen it. It will sharpen the steel.
As long as
Um,
the guys know when it's sharp.
And
So, am I doing this at the right angle?
okay, just pause in the middle and let me look at it. That looks about right.
I've never seen a stone like that. Does that
And
hold
it's a
water
diamond.
better?
No, it's a diamond stone. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to have water.
Okay.
The only thing you're careful of there, how I would hold that stone, instead of putting your thumb there,